Now our next guest, Celia Brooks-Brown, has extensively researched vegetarian food everywhere in the world, and one area she feels is neglected by international cookery books is Africa. She's here today to talk about the food of Ethiopia and Eritrea and to cook some of the gorgeous food from there. Welcome, Celia.
Thank you so much.
Why do you think it gets neglected, African food?
Well, I think from a Western perspective, we're very familiar with North African food. We've all had a tagine or a couscous, and that's partly due to tourism. That's a place where a lot of people have visited.
Home in on that.
Whereas Southern Africa, Eastern and Western Africa, we aren't so familiar with the foods from there. So that's part of it. I think also there's been a great deal of famine in those parts of Africa, and the concept of gastronomy and famine are sort of directly contradictory.
Together,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think you'll find that in that part of the world, there's been great ingenuity with few ingredients. I mean, when there wasn't a piece of meat to enjoy,
this is some of the kind of things that they use in these regions,
yes.
isn't it?
These are some typical and unusual African ingredients. Yes, pumpkins of all different types, as well as greens, all kinds of spinach, pumpkin leaves.
I can imagine they're really treasured, yeah.
Absolutely. Bean leaves are much loved and very nutritious as well. Gram flour, which is chickpea flour, just ground up toasted chickpeas, a really important source of protein and starch as well. An unusual spice, this is called nigella seed or kalonji.
What does it taste like?
I think it's a bit like a combination of oregano and aniseed, very slightly, and it's a very strong flavor. It looks beautiful in the food as well. This white stuff here is called ugali, and that's actually it's a white polenta.
So you'd have that as a side thing with vegetables?
Yes, the starch component of an African meal is very, very important, and that really fills the stomach. Also, yes, peanuts, or which are also referred to as ground nuts, which are, again, a very important protein source.
And spices, obviously, are a big thing there as well. They have their own kind of special...
Well, in particular, East Africa, which is very much influenced by India. In Ethiopia and Eritrea, the kind of curry powder, as it were, is called berbere.
Berbere, okay.
Yes,
and what goes into that?
Lots of exciting spices. Some whole spices, including coriander seed, cumin seed, cardamom, cloves, black peppercorns, and fenugreek.
Right.
As well as some very, very hot dried red chilies. Very important. All Ethiopian and Eritrean food is searingly hot.
Pretty much everything is there.
And then some ground spices as well. Allspice or pimiento, some cinnamon, ground ginger, turmeric, and some paprika. And some salt goes into that mix as well.
And you make your own spice blend up?
Ideally, yes. And certainly, if you can toast your whole spices, it really brings out the flavor and gives them a wonderful nuttiness.
So that's what you've done with these?
Yes. I'm just going to grind those up in the spice grinder here. Now, I've used about 8 dried chilies. Probably a typical Ethiopian would do more like 10 or 12.
It looks pretty potent as it is, actually.
And to that, I'm going to add the ground ones here. Also, I'll need the turmeric. Paprika and turmeric. So I've got about half a teaspoon of allspice, not to be confused with mixed spice. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon. 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, which is also quite spicy. About 3 tablespoons of paprika, and that gives it a lot of color. That gives it a lot of color. And about a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric as well, and about a teaspoon of salt. And that just gets ground to a fine powder. And that is the mighty berbere.
Oh,
doesn't that smell
knock
amazing?
Your head off, actually.
Yes,
it's incredibly fresh. What are you going to do with it?
Okay, well, what I'm making is an Eritrean pumpkin stew called daba zigni. Zigni means spice. So anything that's zigni is in a spicy sauce.
So the onions you've already got cooking.
That's right. The onions I've just browned slightly in a couple of tablespoons of sunflower
oil. And pumpkin goes in.
And then pumpkin is the main ingredient. A nice dense-fleshed orange pumpkin. This is an acorn squash, this particular one. I'm also using some fresh ginger, some tomato paste, and the berbere spice mix. Okay. The yogurt will be a garnish at the end.
Right.
First, we're going to add the ginger. About a good thumb of ginger chopped. A couple of teaspoons of the berbere mix. And this keeps really well in an airtight jar. If you don't want to make it yourself, you can probably find it in a spice shop or African shop as well.
Pumpkin next.
Pumpkin, about 750 grams. And I'm also adding my tomato paste. A couple of tablespoons of that. And then just about anywhere from 500 milliliters to a liter of water.
And so that will cook fairly quickly because the pumpkin's really quite small.
Well, it depends on the pumpkin. It might take 15 minutes, it might take half an hour. You might even want to cook it even longer so the pumpkin is really almost dissolved into the mixture. That can just come to the boil and simmer down.
Very simple.
Until it's ready. And here is one that looks like it's...
I know, it's really bubbling.
Isn't that a wonderful color
Yeah,
you get from
great,
the paprika and from the tomato paste as well?
Okay, so
just give that a little bit of a stir.
Yogurt over. And coriander, you want some coriander as well?
Yes, please. Now, this traditionally in Eritrea would be served as part of a selection of different kinds of stews.
Okay.
And traditionally would be eaten with the flatbread, which is called injera.
Oh, that big
It's a
pancake.
wonderful, huge, soft pancake. But it's quite acceptable to have this just as a really warming winter pumpkin soup.
It's fantastic for here, actually, for this time of year. I mean, it's got the absolute smell of Africa.
Yes. And because it's so spicy, I like to counteract that with a nice dollop of yogurt.
And I presume coriander isn't traditional there, that's your touch.
No, they do.
Oh, do
they will use a bit of, again, that's the Indian influence coming through. But of course, it looks very beautiful on the soup. So there you have it, the debazini, or spicy pumpkin stew, Eritrean style.
To make berbera and bazini, you will need the following spices: cumin seeds, cloves, cardamom seeds, black peppercorns, fenugreek seeds, coriander seeds, dried red chilies, ground ginger, cinnamon, allspice, turmeric and paprika. From the greengrocer, you'll need pumpkin, onion and fresh root ginger. Finally, pick up some tomato puree as well. See, that is hot. It's hot and it's also very sweet.
That'll warm you up on a cold day, won't it?
Fantastic kind of food for around bonfire night.
Absolutely, and that berbere will make even the most bland vegetable taste wonderful.
I think you're right about that. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Great dish, good combination of flavours. You tasted it, it hit you back in the throat a few minutes later. Fantastic, quite spicy.